One day, under heavy rain, a dark wooden coffin sat in silence at the center of the vast church. Elena Brown, a black woman in her early 30s, 6 months pregnant, stood motionless beside it, her hand clenched tightly around her 8-year-old daughter Layla's. Their eyes were red, not only from grief, but from the cold stares directed at them. The Reynolds family, a white, wealthy, and powerful lineage, did not conceal their contempt. To them, Elena had never been worthy of stepping foot here. When the lawyer opened the will, Elena still held on to a sliver of hope. She only wished to keep the little house and the bookstore she and her husband had painstakingly built, the place full of books and memories. But then her father-in-law's low, hoarse voice tore the funeral silence. The bookstore in the house belonged to the Reynolds lineage. You are merely an outsider. The only thing you inherit. He paused, curling his lips, is the old, broken piano in the basement. Laughter erupted. Some relatives nodded in satisfaction. Elena heard the mocking laughs, each one like a knife cutting into her bleeding heart. Not even an hour later, the widow, hand in hand with her daughter, heavily pregnant, was driven out of that grand mansion. No home, no money, no refuge. In their hands, only a broken piano remained, as though the entire family had deliberately flung them a bitterly ironic inheritance. One would think the story ended there, but from that moment, a terrible secret was about to be revealed. Elena was born into a poor working-class family in the outskirts, where classical music from an old radio nurtured her soul since childhood. She studied music with all her love, becoming a humble but passionate music teacher. When she met James Reynolds, a man from a wealthy family but yearning for freedom, Elena believed music had brought them together. They opened a small shop together, selling books, used musical instruments, and hosting gatherings for the children in their neighborhood. That was the happiest time of her life, a simple home filled with laughter. However, the Reynolds family never accepted Elena. In their eyes, she was only an outsider, poor, different in skin color, and unworthy of joining their prestigious lineage. They viewed James's marriage as a humiliation, a stain on their genealogy. When James died suddenly, every mask of civility vanished. His family promptly moved to seize everything, the house, the shop, every penny of savings. They left nothing for Elena and Layla, except the old wooden piano the family treated as trash. That night, rain poured down relentlessly. Elena quietly held her daughter, carrying a few clothes and the heavy instrument, and stepped out of the dazzling mansion. Her pregnant belly made her steps laborious, but she forced herself to move forward, breathing rapidly in the cold downpour. No home, no money, no relatives, only a little child who needed protection, a life not yet born, and a piano broken, keys shattered, strings slack. Elena lifted her face to the pitch-black sky. Tears mingled with rain. Despair encircled her, but in her eyes still flickered a glimmer. She would not surrender. Elena rented a cheap, cramped room in a poor neighborhood, where the walls were damp and a musty smell crept through every crack. The old, battered piano, heavy and ugly, occupied nearly the entire space. She intended to sell it, hoping to get enough money to get by day. One evening, after Layla had fallen into deep sleep, Elena sat down and timidly touched the scratched keys. A few protested with crackling, choked notes, but unexpectedly, some keys rang with a strange, clear sound, echoing like precious metal glowing in the darkness. Elena's heart raced. She tilted her ear to listen, then used a screwdriver to pry open a wood panel in the piano frame. A golden light flickered. Elena held her breath. Inside, the entire internal frame was not steel as in ordinary pianos, but solid gold, concealed beneath the old wood. Tears fell, but this time not bitter with despair. This was the secret gift James had left behind. He knew well the family's greed and cruelty, and had chosen to hide the real treasure, delivering it into the hands of the wife he loved. Elena understood she could not sell all the gold at once, lest she draw attention. Instead, she removed it piece by piece, selling gradually at different pawnshops. With the modest money she obtained, she cared for Layla, bought things for the baby she carried, and began anew. But Elena did not stop at mere survival. Music still flowed in her veins. She began holding small music classes for the neighborhood children. She did not need luxurious classrooms, just the old piano and her gentle voice. Children arrived, first out of curiosity, then gradually sitting down, listening, practicing each note in those crude sounds. Elena saw her younger self, the longing to be heard, to be recognized. Despite all prejudice, she was no longer simply a penniless widow. Each small piece of gold, each music note that rang, together were rebuilding an entire life. Rumors about the free music class in the poor neighborhood spread faster than Elena had expected. At first, only a few children showed up, clumsily tapping out basic notes. But day by day, more came. Single mothers, unemployed fathers, they all began bringing their kids. Inside that cramped rental room, the sound of the old piano echoed, sometimes cracked and broken, yet it brought life to the whole neighborhood. Elena used small amounts of the gold to rent a larger house and turned it into a little space for music. She repainted the walls and bought a few more used instruments. On the front door hung a simple wooden sign, "Music for Everyone." Soon, the story of a widowed black woman, visibly pregnant, teaching free music lessons to underprivileged children, began catching attention. A local newspaper published a piece titled, "The Woman Breathing Life into Her Community with a Broken Piano." That article sparked a flame. People came from everywhere, not just to learn music, but to feel the sound that carried both pain and hope. Charity organizations started offering support. A small official music center was established. Meanwhile, not far away, the Reynolds family had fallen into crisis. The bookstore they had taken from Elena was poorly managed and saw its revenue plummet. Their blind investments, driven by ambition but lacking vision, began to fail. Piece by piece, their wealth slipped away. Debts piled up. The once proud Reynolds name began to crumble. The contrast could not be clearer. On one side, Elena, once thrown out into the streets with a child and an unborn baby, now stood tall, an inspiration to many. On the other side, the Reynolds family, once powerful and wealthy, now drowning in debt and disgrace. On the opening day of the new music center, Elena placed that same old piano in the most honored position. The worn wood, the scratched keys, they remained unchanged. But now, it stood as a symbol of rebirth from ruin, of the hidden strength within what once seemed worthless. Under the stage lights, Elena looked out at hundreds of children, black and white, singing together, tapping on instruments, their eyes glowing with joy. She knew then, the real treasure inside that piano was not gold, but the love James had left behind. And now, that love had become a fire that could never be extinguished. One winter afternoon, as cold winds swept through the streets, Elena saw a small group standing in front of the music center. Their clothes were wrinkled, their faces worn, far from the pride they once carried. It was the Reynolds family. Her father-in-law, once powerful and stern, now had silver hair and hollow eyes. The same people who had laughed at her, who had thrown her and Layla out, now bowed their heads and spoke in shaky voices. "We have nowhere else to go. Please, just a place to stay, even something small." In that moment, memories rushed back. The mocking laughter at the funeral, the cold stares, the cruel words, "You are just an outsider." Elena remembered the pitch-black night, her heavy belly, her hand clutching her little girl's, as she was thrown into the storm with nothing but a broken piano. She took a deep breath. The heart that once ached numb with pain now beat calmly. Elena stepped forward, looked directly into their ashamed eyes, and slowly said, "That broken piano you threw at me, it is what rebuilt this entire life. But my heart no longer has room for your cruelty. No yelling, no revenge, just a calm coldness." The Reynolds family lowered their heads and turned away, their silhouettes staggering through the falling snow. None of them had the courage to look back. Elena stood still at the music center's entrance. She understood now, justice was not revenge. Justice was this very moment, when those who once forced her to the bottom were now forced to witness her rise, stronger and more radiant than ever. Time passed, and the music center grew larger each year. Elena decided to give it a special name, Layla and Hope. Layla, her daughter, the little girl who had walked with her through the darkest days. And Hope, for the child who never had the chance to be born the night they were cast out of their home. On the day the new hall opened, the audience filled every seat. On stage, children of every color sat side by side, playing music, singing in harmony. There was no longer any gap between races or backgrounds. At the center of the stage stood the old piano, its worn wooden shell, its broken keys, now a symbol, a living testimony that something may look ugly, unwanted on the outside, yet hide a treasure within, just like Elena herself, and like so many souls in this world who are overlooked or dismissed. Elena sat quietly, her eyes brimming with tears. In her memory, she heard James's voice once again. Music will keep you standing, even when the whole world is against you. And she had done exactly that. No slogans were needed. The message rang out: never underestimate a soul that has known suffering, because within it, there may lie an entire treasure. If you believe this story deserves to be heard by many, please like, subscribe, and share, because somewhere out there, someone may still be struggling in the dark, and they need just one spark to rise again.